My name is Emily, and I've always prided myself on control. At 35, I'm a fitness trainer and someone who's lived by discipline, structured days, strict diets, and carefully laid out plans. But life has a way of breaking even the strongest walls. I learned that the day I met Alex. It started like any other Tuesday. The gym was bustling, filled with the sound of weights, clanking, and upbeat music pumping through the speakers. I was correcting a client's form when I saw him. He was new, that much was clear. But it wasn't just his unfamiliar face that caught my attention. It was the way he carried himself. Confident, yet understated. Reserved, yet magnetic. He noticed me too. I caught him glancing my way a few times, and though I told myself it was nothing, I couldn't ignore the way his gaze lingered. Days passed, and Alex became a regular at the gym. He wasn't loud or showy like some of the others. He worked with quiet focus, but there was an intensity about him that intrigued me. He started staying after hours, timing his workouts to end when I was closing up. One evening, as I was tidying up the weights, he approached me. His voice was calm but deep, carrying a hint of something unspoken. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, gesturing to the heavier dumbbells I was organizing. I laughed, shaking my head. "I think I've got it, but thanks." He didn't push. Instead, he struck up a conversation about fitness, travel, and life in general. Before I knew it, we were laughing like old friends. But beneath the light-hearted banter, there was something else, an undercurrent of tension that neither of us acknowledged, but both of us felt. Over the next few weeks, our interactions grew more frequent. Coffee breaks after workouts turned into long conversations. I learned about his life, how he'd recently moved to the city after a messy divorce, looking for a fresh start. He seemed vulnerable, yet composed, and that duality drew me in. One evening, the tension between us became impossible to ignore. The gym was nearly empty, save for the two of us. As I passed by him near the treadmill, our arms brushed ever so slightly. It was a fleeting touch, but it sent a spark through me. "Emily," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I turned to face him, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his eyes locking onto mine. I wanted to deny it, to tell him we couldn't. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about him either. There was a fire between us that I had no power to extinguish. That night, we crossed a line. It started with a simple kiss, but it quickly became more. Alone in the quiet gym, with the lights dimmed and the world outside oblivious to us, we gave in to the pull we'd been resisting for weeks. It was passionate, raw, and undeniable. But with that passion came complications. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. What had we done? This wasn't just a fling. It felt like something deeper. And yet the risks were enormous. If anyone found out, it could ruin my reputation, my job, everything I'd worked so hard for. The fear of getting caught added an edge to our encounters. Every glance, every whispered word, every stolen touch was tinged with the possibility of discovery. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. I tried to pull back, to distance myself, but it was impossible. Alex had awakened something in me that I couldn't ignore, a hunger I didn't even know I had. One afternoon, as we sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop far from the gym, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I know this is complicated," he said, his voice steady, "but I've never felt this way before, and I don't want to let it go." Neither did I. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. We found ways to steal moments together, always careful, always looking over our shoulders. The secrecy added to the intensity, but it also weighed on me. I was living a double life, and the cracks were beginning to show. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something. I wasn't just afraid of getting caught. I was afraid of what this meant for me. Alex wasn't just a forbidden temptation. He was a mirror, reflecting parts of myself I'd buried for years. Desires, vulnerabilities, and a yearning for something more. I don't know where this story ends. Maybe we'll find a way to make it work, or maybe the weight of it all will eventually pull us apart. But one thing is certain. Alex changed me. He reminded me that life isn't about control. It's about feeling, risking, and living. And for that, I'll always be grateful. After that night in the gym, nothing was the same. I thought we could keep it casual, hidden away in the shadows of our carefully constructed lives. But the truth has a way of surfacing, even when you try to bury it. It's been 3 weeks since Alex and I crossed that line, and every stolen moment with him feels like a small rebellion. But it's getting harder to keep our secret. People are starting to notice the subtle shifts, the way his eyes linger on me when he thinks no one's watching, the way I smile a little too easily when he's around. One evening, as I was locking up the gym, I heard footsteps behind me. I froze, my heart pounding. It was Lucas, the gym manager, and he was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. "Emily," he started, his tone casual but probing. "Everything okay? You've seemed distracted lately." I forced a laugh, brushing off his concern. "Just busy, you know how it is." But his gaze lingered a moment too long, and I knew he wasn't convinced. That night, I called Alex. "We have to be more careful," I said, pacing my apartment. "Lucas is suspicious." On the other end of the line, Alex was silent for a moment before responding. "Maybe we're being too paranoid. As long as we're discreet, no one will know." But I wasn't so sure. The next day, I walked into the gym to find Lucas and Alex talking near the front desk. My stomach dropped. Were they talking about me? About us? I couldn't tell, but the tension in the room was palpable. Alex caught my eye and gave me a small, reassuring smile, but it did little to calm my nerves. Later, during a quiet moment, he pulled me aside. "Relax," he whispered, his hand brushing against mine. "We're fine." But I couldn't relax. The fear of being caught was consuming me, turning every interaction into a potential threat. And yet, the thought of walking away from Alex felt impossible. One night, we met at his apartment, a rare escape from the constant watchful eyes of the gym. It was a small, cozy space, filled with books and a faint scent of sandalwood. As we sat on his couch, the tension melted away, replaced by the comforting familiarity we'd built over the past weeks. "Do you ever think about what this is?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alex leaned back, his eyes fixed on me. "I think about it all the time. I think about you all the time." His honesty caught me off guard. I wasn't used to someone being so direct, so vulnerable. But before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. We both froze, the moment shattered. "Were you expecting someone?" I asked, my voice laced with panic. Alex shook his head, his expression mirroring my own fear. He stood and moved toward the door, peering through the peephole. "It's just my neighbor," he said, exhaling in relief. But the interruption served as a harsh reminder of the precarious position we were in. Over the next few days, I found myself questioning everything. Was this worth the risk? Could we really keep this up without someone finding out? And then it happened. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon. The gym was nearly empty, and I was finishing up a session with a client. As I walked toward the back room, I overheard Lucas talking to another trainer. "Have you noticed how close Emily and Alex have gotten?" he said, his tone casual but laced with curiosity. My heart stopped. I knew I had to act fast. That evening, I met Alex in a secluded park, away from prying eyes. "People are talking," I said, my voice trembling. "Lucas suspects something." Alex reached for my hand, his touch grounding me. "Let them talk," he said firmly. "We know what this is. They don't." "But what if it gets out?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "What if we lose everything?" He didn't have an answer, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The truth was, I didn't know how this would end. But as Alex pulled me into his arms, I realized something. For all the fear and uncertainty, I didn't regret a single moment. This wasn't just a fleeting affair. It was real, raw, and worth fighting for. No matter the cost. The whispers in the gym didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Lucas had become increasingly observant, and every glance, every smile between Alex and me felt like a spotlight shining on our secret. The pressure was mounting, and I knew it was only a matter of time before something gave. One evening, after most of the staff had left, Lucas called me into his office. My stomach churned as I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes studying me. "Emily, he began, his tone measured. You know I value you as a trainer here. You've built great relationships with our clients, and your work is impeccable. Thank you, I replied cautiously, sensing there was more to come. But... He hesitated, then leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. I've noticed some distractions lately, specifically your interactions with Alex. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Lucas, Alex is just another client. I'm professional with everyone here. He raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. I hope that's true. Because if there's anything inappropriate going on, it could put your position and the reputation of this gym at risk. I left the office shaken. The walls were closing in, and I knew I couldn't keep living like this. That night, I met Alex at his apartment. He opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw me, but his expression quickly darkened when he noticed my demeanor. What's wrong? He asked, guiding me inside. Lucas knows, I said, my voice trembling. He didn't say it outright, but he knows. If we keep this up, I could lose my job. You could lose your membership. Alex's jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't say anything. Then he took my hands in his grip firm. Emily, I don't want to lose you, but I can't let you risk everything for me. Tears welled up in my eyes. I don't want to lose you either, but I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. For the first time since we'd started this, I saw the vulnerability in him, the fear of losing what we'd built together. We'll figure it out, he said softly, pulling me into his arms. But as much as I wanted to believe him, doubt lingered in the back of my mind. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. It was a Saturday morning, and the gym was packed. I was leading a group class when I noticed Lucas watching me from the corner of the room. His gaze was sharp, and I could feel the weight of his suspicion pressing down on me. After the class ended, Alex approached me near the water fountain. He smiled, his usual confidence shining through, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Let's grab lunch later, he said, his voice low. I nodded, but before I could respond, Lucas appeared behind us. Emily, he said, his tone cold. Can I see you in my office? I froze. Alex glanced at me, his expression tense, but he didn't say anything. Inside Lucas's office, the confrontation I'd been dreading finally happened. I've given you the benefit of the doubt, Lucas said, his voice sharp, but it's clear something is going on between you and Alex. This gym has policies, Emily. If you can't keep your personal life separate from your work, there will be consequences. I wanted to deny it, to lie my way out of the situation, but I couldn't. Lucas had seen too much, and I knew there was no use pretending anymore. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but what I do outside of work is my business. Lucas shook his head, his expression a mix of disappointment and frustration. Not when it affects the gym. Consider this your warning, Emily. Don't make me escalate this. As I left his office, my mind raced. How much longer could I keep this up? That evening, I met Alex at a secluded spot by the lake, a place we discovered early on in our relationship, where we could escape the world and just be ourselves. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice breaking. Lucas is watching my every move. It's only a matter of time before he forces me out. Alex reached for my hand, his eyes searching mine. Then leave the gym. Come with me. We'll start over somewhere else. His words took me by surprise. Alex, I can't just uproot my life. This is my career, my stability. And what about us? He asked, his voice desperate. Are you really willing to give this up? Tears streamed down my face as I shook my head. I don't want to, but I don't know how to make this work. For the first time, Alex didn't have an answer. We sat there in silence, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. When I left that night, I knew something had changed. The fire that had burned so brightly between us was beginning to waver, suffocated by the reality of our circumstances. The next morning, I walked into the gym, determined to put on a brave face. But as the hours passed, I felt a growing sense of unease. Alex didn't show up for his usual workout, and when I tried calling him, he didn't answer. It wasn't until later that evening that I finally heard from him. I need some time to think, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. This isn't fair to you, Emily. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." As I hung up the phone, I felt a mixture of heartbreak and relief. Maybe he was right. Maybe the best thing for both of us was to let go. But as I sat alone in my apartment, the silence was deafening. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just lost the one person who truly understood me. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't know what came next.